Guys, today, 5 social housing secrets unlocked and how you can benefit from probably the most popular strategy in property at the moment. Let's get into it. Guys, if you don't know who I am already, I'm Accommodation. I've built a portfolio of over 37 properties over the last 15 years with a net worth of over £10 million. I am now pivoting with this rental reform bill that's threatening, and it's just another threat. And it's threatening to reduce landlords' margins and property investors' margins, and I'm now pivoting to working with social housing providers, and I'm going to explain 5 key things, 5 key secrets that I found out and unlocked for you guys. This is primarily for landlords and property people who own property, and not from the point of a rent-to-rent or social provider, a social housing operator. This is for potential landlords or landlords already who predominantly watch my channel and have assets to potentially rent to social housing provider. And it's important you know these 5 social housing secrets, so let's get into it, guys. So number 1, when you speak to a social housing provider or care provider, they may tell you that they are a care provider, they do social care and they're authorised and regulated. This is 90% not the case, guys. To deliver social care or any element of support requires CQC, the government agency of CQC registration. So the first question to really get down to is, are you CQC registered? If they're not, it's fine, but what it means is you're then dealing with a supplier. So supplier is a company or person who supplies your property to the council, and they have that relationship with the council and do social housing. You can also have an approved only supplier, where the council will only deal with certain housing trusts or certain housing companies to provide properties to them. And quite a few councils, not the ones I deal with, but quite a few councils only deal with approved suppliers, or people who've big companies who've literally given backhanders or know someone in the council who've got the big boy contracts, and they're the £1 million contracts when you see the filthy landlords getting rich like £6-7 million a year from asylum seekers. They're typically the approved suppliers, guys, and it's very hard to get in that position. And if you can get in that position, you'd already know about it, and I certainly can't at the moment. And would I necessarily not even want to? They tend to be the hotel owners, the chain owners, the 1,000 property guys, but or they've had over. Another one was caravan parks, holiday homes. There's a famous example which I'll put on screen now. So there you've got the 3 kind of core people you will deal with, and who will potentially, I mean, not so much the approved supplier, they won't be ringing you up asking for a couple of properties, will they, fuck? Will a CQC provider be ringing you up? No, they won't. It's likely to be the middle supplier. And these are the people who set up a business, and some of them do really well, and I deal with some of them are complete idiots who you want to avoid. And they literally know, they still know people in the council, and they know what properties the council are looking for, and they'll pay you rent, and usually it's market rent landlords, to supply the property to the council under their own, it's called a back-to-back lease. So what's the benefit of this? So number 2, okay, so I go to the council and I go, I want to rent my property to you. Now another secret here is they will offer you LHA rates, which is basically or LHA plus 10% and maybe a £250 incentive. And this is basically going, okay, you're the landlord, we know that you're going to get this on the open market, we know what the rent is, we know what our budget is, and we can only pay LHA rates plus 10%. Now a lot of landlords, and it depends on the area, guys, a lot of landlords may take this, and I'm not saying don't take it, because it depends again massively on the area. Okay, so you might have a property in a Hull, there's not many approved, there's not much demand for operations. There's the council, it's a low rental area, so the council can pick up houses for pretty much the same as the market rent anyway. It's not loads of shortage of properties, and the rates, the private market rates are low, so it doesn't make sense for the council to pay exorbitant rates to rent a property from you. Now from a landlord's point of view, from your point of view, if you're watching this, is you're gonna get no voids, you're not gonna get no payment problems from tenants, and especially in these lower areas like which I just mentioned, no disrespect to anyone who's got properties there, but in those areas it may be beneficial to even take the same rent from the government, from the council, because it's guaranteed. Okay, you're not going to be a millionaire from rent, but as I said on this channel, you only really make the big money, and this is where we stand out from the rent-to-rent operators. You only really make the big chunks of money when you buy property and you remortgage and you let the value ride. You're in it for the long term. So you've got to bear that in mind. Yes, you can get higher rents and stuff, but you're making your money when you buy and when the value goes up, and building your portfolio, remortgaging out and doing it again. Now, the second secret, the second part of that number 2 is nightly rates. So yes, in certain areas you can ring up the council and you can potentially, if you angle it and negotiate it right, or you know the right person, get emergency accommodation rates, and these are nightly rates. They can vary from £10 to £30 a night, and depending on how many rooms you've got, obviously you've got to be compliant. So bear in mind, a lot of the suppliers who you may give property to, and this is just open and honest with everyone who's watching this, we all know it, may be getting nightly rates and giving you just above market rate, but they have to do a lot of work for it. In certain instances, they have to check in tenants, they have to take on the risk, they have to pay the bills, etc. Now guys, you're sitting there and you're going, right, I want a nightly rate. And I've been that landlord where I've gone, do you know what, forget the social housing provider, I'm just going to undercut and go straight to the council. These are all my 30 properties, I should be able to get nightly rates. It's not going to happen, right? I know a landlord who I bought the latest HMO, linked to the video in his channel, and he had 40 properties and they all with the council, and he wasn't getting nightly rates, guys. And he sold one of them to me because he was fed up. And he wasn't fed up because of the money, he was fed up with dealing with the tenants, with the council tenants. So just bear that in mind. It depends on the council, it depends on your relationship, it depends how you position it. If they know you're a landlord anyway, okay, they're less likely to give you nightly rates, whereas if that's your actual sole business of taking properties and supplying them to the council, you're more likely to get a higher rate. It's just how it works, guys. Now, as a landlord, do I want to start a business where I'm getting nightly rates and taking on a property, taking on responsibilities? Maybe there's a void. There usually isn't a void, by the way, because when someone moves it out, in certain areas there's such demand that they'll move someone in within 3 to 5 days. But do I want that headache? Guys, as I said to you before, you make serious money, millions, from building your portfolio. You're not going to make millions even if you get a nightly rate. Okay, you might get £800 a room, £1,000 a room per month. Okay, that's what they get. Remember, they're paying bills, remember they're checking in tenants, they're distracted, they're dealing with maintenance issues. Guys, I don't need that headache. Okay, I truly believe, and anyone who's thinking of working with me, I truly believe in one deal. An average deal, I'll make 30k when I'm buying below market value. I want to focus my efforts on that. I'd rather be doing 2 or 3 or 4 of those a month than messing about, ringing up councils, waiting for meetings. One of my mates is I've got a few friends who are social housing providers in different cities, right? They're always on Zooms with councils, they're always waiting for approvals, they're always doing inspections to take on board a property. You know what it's like even when you try and pay your council tax bill as a landlord. So imagine that times 100. That's what you're dealing with. It's a full-time job in itself. We're landlords, we're making our money work for us, we're investing in property. Do we have time to do this? You decide. Okay. That being said, number 3, how to get emergency temporary accommodation rates. Guys, the third secret I'm going to unlock is how to get these rates. Okay. First of all, you need to get property in the right areas. Not in areas where it's oversaturated and not in areas where there's low demand. For example, London. These are quite good because why? Hotel rooms are expensive. Landlords typically are all full anyway. There's a massive demand and there's a gap in the market for someone to go, okay, we can provide this HMO on this nightly rate, and guess what? It's going to be cheaper than a hotel in London, okay? Again, somewhere like Liverpool, where there's an abundance of hotels and Airbnbs and they're very cheap. I've stayed in Liverpool for £30 a night before. Are you going to get the same nightly rates? No, you're not. Now, Liverpool do pay nightly rates, but it's very low, guys. It's very low. So where we do social housing in Liverpool, we get LHA rates plus 10%, sometimes plus 20%, sometimes a £300 incentive. But we don't get typically very, very high nightly rates. Okay, but again, the advantage for clients buying Liverpool is that they're locked in to a 3-year contract, no maintenance, and guess what, guys? Liverpool tenants are hard to deal with, the local market, so what are you better off doing? Giving it to the council. In Manchester, it's a different story. We can get good nightly rates, but again, do you want to focus on growing your portfolio in Manchester where you're going to make millions, or do you want to focus on getting every single rent you can get and bogging your mind in that? So you just got to think, guys. And we do a lot of social housing in Manchester, and to be honest, I get above market rates for my properties, but I don't get the nightly rate. That goes to the middleman. And the middleman is a supplier, and they're not even an approved only supplier. I could actually ring up and do it myself. But for the hassle, the headache, I just want to be able to scale up to 100 properties. I just want to be able to get a bit more than the market rate and typically have no voids, no bills, no maintenance, and I can really scale the business to 100k a month, which is going to happen this year, guys. So that's really hard to get emergency temporary rates. Now, quickly, guys, I know there's a lot of people watching this who are getting into property and doing rent to rent. Okay, so if you're doing rent to rent, what you want to make sure is you're getting properties in good locations to get this nightly rate. You want to make sure you can get the emergency rate before you take on the property, and then you want to make sure you're giving a bit extra to the landlord, guys. Don't be tight. Don't be like, okay, I can get somebody else's property, because what they'll say to you is you go and get somebody else's property. Okay, because landlords are tight as well. I should know, I am one, okay? So landlords are greedy, landlords are tight. So if you're doing rent to rent, give a bit extra to the landlord, and what that means is they're going to come back to you. It doesn't have to be nightly rates, it could be, you know, a bit less, but it's better to have a deal than not have a deal. It's better to have a property than not have a property, especially in these areas. Number 4, another housing secret, how to negotiate. Okay, from the landlord's point of view, how do you negotiate? You can't negotiate something which is not in demand, okay? So if you've got a property in a high demand area, you'll already know about it, typically northwest, etc. So how do you negotiate? Okay, number 1, you say, look, this is the first one I've got a portfolio, and you tell them portfolio, your mates, etc. Number 2, if you're educated in what they're getting, okay, and you say to them, look, I know you're not CQC registered, I know you're not an approved the only supplier to the council. It shows that you're in control. You take control of that negotiation, and you get what's best for you. Now, if you're watching this, what's best for you? If some of my clients have got multi-million-pound portfolios, what's best for you is probably no headache and just give it. What's best for somebody starting out is probably to get a bit more. So it depends on the person. I'm not saying if you're worth 20 million and you've got a portfolio of 100 properties to go, I'm not giving it you because you're £100 off what I need, okay? That's obviously silly. It depends. But if you're 21 and starting out with 2 properties, maybe you do need that extra 100. And if you explain that to them, you know, I'm just starting out and it's going to be a long-term relationship, they may say yes, they may say no. And if they say no, guys, and if you're not starting out and if you've got your own property, what you do is you cut the middleman, you go straight to the council. And guys, I'm teaching people how to do that on a separate, apart from my sourcing and stuff, so it's part of it. If you want to learn how to do that, yes in the comments, and you'll get a free property investment guide and potentially book a call with myself and see how I can help you. But I've helped quite a few people who are younger people go from this to straight to the council, guys. It's not easy, but if you've got time, it's doable. So you've learned how to negotiate. So the secrets are basically, they are probably getting a nightly rate. They're probably, obviously, the other thing to remember, landlords particularly, is there needs to be a lot in the deal for them, because if they're operating on bare minimum margins, that can mess up at any time, and you don't want to be in that position. So make sure they're making a good, healthy profit, okay? And try and get it out of them how much they're making. They might lie, they might not. But if you can try and get it out of them and talk about money and talk about how wealthy you are, and bring it up that way and get them to admit that they're making 10k a month or 20k a month or 1k from your property or whatever, then at least you know there's a buffer there and they should be able to pay. You don't want to go to a provider, a supplier, let's call them, who's barely making anything on your property, because as soon as there's a maintenance issue or something, you're gonna potentially be at risk. The other thing I'll put in a, thank you for watching this far, I'll put in an extra one which I haven't written on here is, guys, they will say they're covered, they'll cover all the maintenance, all of that. Okay, we want evidence of insurances. Okay, what are you insured for? How are you going to cover a boiler? Bank statements. Okay, company accounts. If they haven't got company accounts, bank statements. Okay, we want to know that they can afford to repair something. The devil's in the detail in the contract. Obviously, make sure you read the contract. Typically, they're not, and rightly so. They're not liable for the exterior structure. That's the landlords, obviously. But interior, we want to know that who's doing the maintenance. Are we doing the maintenance and then billing you back? Who's looking after the boiler? Why don't you take out insurance with British Gas for £20 a month? And then I know I've got peace of mind that the boiler's covered. That's what I said to one of the providers. I keep on calling them providers. They're not providers, they're suppliers. Again, provider is really a CQC registered social care provider. Okay. Demand versus supply, number 5. So how are we going to implement this in your business or in my business? There needs to be sufficient demand. There is sufficient demand generally in the UK housing market for social housing, because there's probably, the last time I checked, there's probably more now, I think it was 4 or 7 applications per property. Number 2, there's landlords selling up. There's a reduction of rental stock. It's going to get worse for the renters' rights bill, and this is where we're cleaning up buying, guys. But in terms of rentals, there's a massive shortage. Then you've got asylum seekers, domestic violence, you've got people who are just homeless, and all of those problems are growing in England. So obviously there's a massive demand, but the secret is, guys, demand is not spread evenly. So you may have massive demand in Birmingham, but you've also got a massive supply of properties at a very affordable rate. In Manchester, you have massive demand, or Liverpool, but the rates, Manchester and other places in the northwest around Manchester, Greater Manchester, but the rates for private rented and the competition for private rented is a lot higher. So again, when we're negotiating, the demand is way better in Manchester. Obviously in London as well, but we're talking about from property investors' point of view. So we're buying places where it's a huge capital growth, but also massive demand for tenants, so we can pick our tenants. So I can go, okay, I'm negotiating now. You're not going to give me 20% above market value. It's not a problem. I've got a tenant, professional working tenant, who's going to pay 12 months in advance. Don't worry about it. Why can I do that? Because my properties are located in strategic areas. It doesn't have to be the most expensive, it doesn't have to be in the city centre, but I know the areas we're buying and we're sourcing for clients, which meets all these criteria and our own criteria. Because remember, guys, Warren Buffett saying, don't buy a asset which you won't want to hold for 10 years, okay? So you're not just buying because social housing, because at the end of the day, guys, another secret for you, another bonus for watching this far is government funding can change any time. People think, and social housing suppliers say, oh no, it's guaranteed by the government 5-10 years. It is guaranteed until something comes on the news and they go, okay, we're cutting that. Benefits were guaranteed, weren't they, until they've cut it, they've started reviewing it, right? So you're only as good as a government, and with all the cuts, who's to say in 10 years or 5 years that they may fund it differently, they may have a different scheme. Now, social housing suppliers love to sell you on the fact that it's a government-backed scheme, okay? It is, but do we all trust the government that everything stays the same, nothing stays the same? So we want a backup plan, guys. So we want to buy in an area like the Northwest, which I specialise in sourcing, but more to the point, it's proven and tested for 15 years, guys. I've been renting properties without social housing. I'm only getting into it in the last year, okay? And I've been 90% occupancy, through Brexit and most of my tenants were European, they all left. I'm still at 90% occupancy, okay? I don't need social housing. I'm doing it so I can grow the portfolio and reduce the maintenance bill, because as you scale up and you build your portfolio, the maintenance bill on HMOs can go higher. And we're losing, we're not losing, but the build costs are higher now. So the cost to do repairs, not £50 a day anymore. It can be £100 a day, £200 a day. So just to reduce that and to take the stress off and to just scale forward, I'm using social housing. But do I expect to be using them in 10 years? Probably not, guys. I expect the rent to massively gone up in, for example, the Northwest. And I expect that there's either going to be a reset, but I don't see any more money coming from the government to pay extra and keep going up. But I'm expecting that from tenants, okay? So just bear in mind you need a plan B. So, as I said, in an area where there's not that demand for a high calibre of tenants, we don't really want to be buying, because one, we'll get less from social housing, but two, we'll get less on the private market as well. And we won't get the capital growth, guys. So you can see how it's all interlinked, where you're sourcing, your property buying, your social housing, your professional tenants are all, it's like an interdependent loop, where if you get one bit wrong, if you get the property source wrong, or in the wrong area, or not the most effective area, then you won't get the most effective private opportunities, you won't get the most effective social housing opportunities, and it just loops and loops, and your whole portfolio will be like that. If you do the opposite and source well and buy well, you'll be in a position like I am today, where I've got social housing wanting the properties, I've got Airbnb operators wanting the properties, I can do it myself. I can give it to a group of students, I can give it to doctors and nurses from abroad. I've got all five, and it's up to me to pick and choose. That's where you want to be. And obviously, don't just rely on one source of income, so don't just rely on one provider, don't just rely on one strategy. We need to be doing multiple, and if you've got a portfolio, obviously. And that's what I advise and do for all my clients. So you've got to, it's a short video this week, you kind of got to near enough the end now, so I'm going to tell you what to avoid. Number one, guys, avoid 5-year terms. The number of landlords who come to me and go, I want a 5-year contract. No, you don't. Not if you own a property in the Northwest, you don't, because what's going to happen is in fact, you can't, a lot of landlords don't think ahead, right? So you agree £1,000 a month now, okay, which is average. So in 5 years, £1,000 a month is going to be a significant below market rental amount, okay? Yes, you might have inflation linked increases in the contract, which they love to do, and the councils offer that themselves. But in the Northwest where we're buying, we're beating inflation. So we don't want the rent going up 2% a year, because next year, or in 2.5 years, it could be £2,000, it could be £1,800 a month. So we want that flexibility. We want to make sure we've got a break clause or a shorter term. And guys, guess what? Another secret is, if the government stops the funding, you're not going to get the 5 years anyway. It's not like you're going to take them to court to satisfy the contract, because they're just going to close the company. So it's irrelevant anyway whether it's 5 years or not. You need to be protected on your side that you might want to change the rent. Because as I said, in 2 years' time, you might be able to get £1,800 for it, and you're still getting £1,000 from social housing, and now you can't exit. So make sure the contract's in your favour, guys. And if you want me to check over any contracts, yes in the comments, and you can get on to me through my team and see if I can help. Anyone who's not registered on Companies House, avoid. Obviously, guys, you're watching this, you're adult, mature investors, you know this already. And avoid trying to do everything yourself, guys. Because I've seen this happen a few times, and it's never worked out well, even for myself. As a property investor, as someone with 50k in the bank or 100k in the bank, you want to really be growing your portfolio and buying assets. You don't want to be trying to do a side business for an extra £500 a month. And you want to concentrate on what you do best. So what I do best is sourcing and buying properties. I've never taken a loss with properties. I've always made money buying properties. So what's going to make me the most money? Buying properties. I know how to rent properties. I know how to do all this. But for the sake of 100 quid, or 5, or even 400 quid, I'm not going to set up and become a social housing supplier, really, to be honest, okay? I want to just buy, get it guaranteed, get the money coming in, remortgage, buy again, and that's how I build wealth.